Welcome to Razzball Radio, Fantasy Sports Network. Nick Capozzi here. It is Thursday. We got some Thursday night football happening for you tonight. But right now, we're going to kick off with something special. That's right. All the way from GoForThe2.com, Mr. Joseph Lisi. What's up, Joe? How you doing, brother?
I'm doing well, Nick. How's everything? Thanks for having me. It's a football Thursday right now.
Well, listen, every day is football for me. I'm actually getting slack from some of the Razzballers that I'm not doing any baseball podcasts, but I'm going to work on something. I'm going to make some phone calls today, and especially for guys playing in head-to-head leagues, try and see if we can do a little baseball. But I'm excited, man, because you're part of the Razzball Radio team now, brother. You're going to give us some college football insight. Now, listen, listeners, viewers, readers, this is still a fantasy football show, 100%. But we're going to do a segment every Thursday with Joe because Joe knows college football like no one else that I know. We're going to talk some lines. Why not? In case you're in Vegas or if you're watching this abroad or I guess in the state of New Jersey, because now you can actually wager at off-track betting in New Jersey now. Chris Christie just approved that, didn't he?
Yeah, he did, and we love him here in New Jersey. It looks like it'll take effect this coming Sunday, so we'll see how it plays out, but everybody's excited.
Yeah, absolutely. Why not? A little action on the game, all in the name of good fun. Okay, let's talk some of the games that are happening this weekend in college football. Let's start at the top with Iowa State versus the Iowa Hawkeyes. Iowa State plus 10 in that game. Break it down for me, Joseph.
Well, I really feel strongly about this game, Nick. I really like Iowa for a couple of factors. Iowa State started their season against North Dakota State. They were up 14-0 in the first quarter. They lost that game 31-14. They came back the following week against Kansas State, held a big halftime lead against Kansas State and quarterback Jake Waters, but they let that lead slip and lost that game 32-28. They now have to go on the road in a rivalry game to face Iowa. Iowa has not looked good over the last couple of ball games, but I like what they have on the offensive and defensive sides, and I like head coach Kirk Ferentz. The last 3 games, though, have been decided by 6 points. I don't care. I really feel strongly about this game. I think Iowa dominates Iowa State in this matchup.
All right, so you're not taking the 10 points with Iowa State. The Hawkeyes are going to blow this right out of Iowa.
They have a great quarterback in Jake Rudock. They could possibly be a sleeper in the Big Ten Conference this year.
All right, let's see how you do. So you're taking Iowa in that game. By the way, when we were doing the tour and I drove around the country, I came up with a new state motto for the great state of Iowa. The data service not available state. Man, try and get a signal in the state of Iowa. Holy cow. Impossible. Impossible. Okay, next up, Georgia Bulldogs. 6th-ranked Georgia Bulldogs versus the 24th-ranked South Carolina Gamecocks. South Carolina is giving you 6.5 points. You get 6.5 points with the Gamecocks. Break down that game for me, brother.
Well, you know I came on your show over the summer, and I picked the Georgia Bulldogs to win the national championship.
I know you did.
I'm not backing away from that. This is a very critical game in the SEC East. South Carolina has not looked good defensively. They have a lot of inexperience on the defensive side of the ball, and on top of that, have not been able to create sacks. They have 1 sack in 2 ball games. They got exposed in the secondary by Texas A&M, and last week by East Carolina. They did pick up a 33-23 victory, but I still like Georgia in this matchup. Numbers-wise does favor South Carolina. They've won 3 of the last 4, and Georgia's dropped the last 2 in Columbia, but they've had a week to prepare. Offensive coordinator Mike Bobo, defensive coordinator Jeremy Pruitt. You give them an extra week to break down the South Carolina offense and defense. I think that benefits Georgia. Couple that with Heisman Trophy candidate Todd Gurley, 5th-year senior quarterback Hudson Mason, and a bunch of talent on the offensive side of the ball. I really think Georgia dominates this ball game.
So you're not taking South Carolina with the 6.5 points?
No, I think Georgia, it might be a close game early, but in the end, Georgia dominates. They pick up a decisive victory.
All right, Louisville Cardinals, 21st rank in the country versus Virginia. Louisville -7.
Louisville's looked good over the first 2 ball games with new head coach Bobby Petrino. He was there prior to him moving to Arkansas. Has done a great job. Quarterback Will Garner's looked good, played well within the system, but they do have an injury that started the year with wide receiver Devontae Parker, so they're a little limited in terms of what they can do stretching defenses. When you look at this Virginia defense, they really impressed me week number 1 against 7th-ranked UCLA. They were able to force turnovers, get in quarterback Brett Hundley's face. Very underrated defense in Charlottesville by the Cavs. I'm calling for the upset. Mike London,
come on, straight up upset?
Straight up upset.
Wow.
I like Virginia in this matchup. Louisville going on the road for the first time. I think it matches up very well for the Cavs. I like what they have to offer.
All right, I'm going to see how you do, man. We're coming back next week, and I'm putting this right back on you,
You
brother.
do that. That's fine. Everybody calls me out. They've been calling me out on the Iowa pick, so we'll see how that's why they play the games.
All right, Tennessee, Oklahoma. Oklahoma, the fourth-ranked Sooners in the country. Oklahoma, 21 points here going to Tennessee in this game. I don't even know what to do with that.
Well, when you look at Tennessee, for the last 4 years now, Nick, they've opened up their season 2-0. The last 3 years, the following game, they've dropped that ball game. So that's not a good sign for the Volunteers. Very young team on the offense and defensive lines. They're the only team in NCAA that had to replace both their offensive line starters and their defensive line starters. 9 total starters entering the season. So it's a testament to what head coach Butch Jones has done to get that team together. But I feel like they're a young team. They're still a year away. When you look at Oklahoma at home, quarterback Trevor Knight, explosive. Head coach Bob Stoops will have a solid game plan in place. It's going to be a very difficult matchup for Tennessee to go on the road in Norman and pull off the upset. They might be able to keep it close, but they're going to have to run the football with Jalen Hurd and Marlon Lane. I just don't think they have the offensive line to do it. The offensive line has given up 4 sacks now in 2 ball games. You look at that Oklahoma defense led by Eric Stryker. They have a bunch of talent. They're going to blitz. They're going to really cause a lot of problems for quarterback Justin Worley, and I think it's a blowout for Oklahoma.
So you're not afraid of the 21 points?
No, I just think that Oklahoma has the superior talent on the offensive side of the ball, and I really think that going to Norman will put a lot of pressure on Tennessee. They might be able to keep it close early, but in the end, OU covers the number.
All right, fair enough. Real quick, I don't have time for you to break it down, but real quick, Penn State versus Rutgers. Penn State minus 3.5. Just give me the pick.
I love Rutgers. It's their first Big Ten game. Look out. That place is going to be crazy. Gary Nova and the crew. I think they get the upset.
Come on, look out. Okay, guys, he is Joseph Lisi, at Go For The Two, number 2 on Twitter. And his website, of course, is gofor2again.com. If you like college football, this is the man that you want to follow. Joe, really appreciate you joining us here at Razzball Radio Fantasy Sports Network. We'll be back talking fantasy football right after this. Welcome back, Razzball Radio Fantasy Sports Network. I am Nick Capozzi. You can follow me on Twitter at Nick Capozzi, Nickcapozzi. All right, so we're trying out, well, we're not trying out Joe Lisi. Joe Lisi is covering college for us, but, this year we are going to talk a little bit about lines, what's going on, especially, a lot of guys head down to Vegas, with the changes that are happening in New Jersey. A lot of people want the information, so we're happy to give it. But now we're going to talk some pure fantasy football. Let's kick off with some of the news that's happening. According to the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, it appears Eddie Lacy with the concussion is going to play this weekend. You know what? If you have Eddie Lacy, I hate handcuffing, but I'm probably handcuffing James Starks. He's only 24% owned, so he's a guy that you can go out and grab. And hey, if you're in a league, you got an extra bench spot, and you want to take advantage of the guy who's got Eddie Lacy, pick up James Starks yourself. Why not? Why not? All right, what else we got? Jordan Cameron called himself all good after the MRI in his shoulder, but you know what? I'm not buying that. Apparently, it's a sprained AC joint. But I'll tell you this: the Browns signed another tight end. They brought in another tight end to test out and work out. So I am a little bit more concerned with Jordan Cameron's shoulder. If you're looking for some tight ends on the waiver wire, I've been stumping Dwayne Allen. He's 31% owned. Larry Donald, 13%, and Niles Paul of the Redskins, who I think is going to get an opportunity if Jordan Reed isn't back or ready. He's only 1% owned. All right, so Maurice Jones-Drew suffered a hand injury week 1 and had a procedure, which is a nice way to say he probably had surgery on the hand. I don't want anything to do with this Oakland running game, but you're probably going to see Run DMC this weekend for the Raiders. A couple of guys, if you are looking for running backs that are widely available, who are going to get touches, especially if you're playing in a half point or full point per reception league. Jaquiz Rogers, there was a lot of opportunity for him in that Atlanta passing attack, 10% owned. Dexter McCluster, 5% owned. He's a guy that a lot of people were big on this year. And Latavius Murray, if you want to gamble on someone in that Oakland backfield, Latavius Murray has the most upside there. Plus, at the end of the day, it might be, just by attrition that he winds up being the starting running back. So Latavius Murray, 1% owned. Why not? Rams quarterback Sean Hill with the thigh is not practicing. You want no part of this offense versus the Bucs. Even if you got Brian Quick, who is interesting, I'm not starting anyone versus the Bucs except for Zach Stacy, and even that I don't really want to do. I'm not big on Stacy this year. Not. So Chris Long, speaking of the Rams, had surgery on his ankle. He's going to miss 8 to 10 weeks. This is a big blow for the defense. They have a ton of D-line depth. That's the one thing they've got going for them. But I will tell you this, Chris Long is a big part of that defense. Someone asked me on Twitter yesterday, hey, Nick, with Chris Long out, are you still comfortable starting the Rams defense? Some people had them ranked as high as number 2. It's a great unit, but here's the problem. That offense is not going to spend a lot of time on the field, which means what's going to happen is that defense is going to get worn down. A, they're going to get tired later in the games. B, the more time they spend on the field, the reality is, the metric is that they're going to give up more yardage and points. So I'm not, because of the offense, the Rams D is falling for me personally. All right, what else we got? Mr. Cecil Shorts, hamstring, returned to practice Wednesday on a limited basis. Marquise Lee also has a strained hamstring. And wait, there's more. Toby Gerhart, we talked about this yesterday, with his ankle, did not practice on Wednesday. This offense is going to be a mess until guys come back healthy. There's a lot of young wide receivers there. Hearns with the 2 touchdowns week 1. People went bananas for him on waivers. He's up to 51% ownership from being a guy who is not owned. But I think what's going to happen there with all those young wide receivers, you're going to have different guys having different big days, if they have a big day at all. And if you've got shares in Toby Gerhart, I would move them right now. Someone wants to give you something for Toby Gerhart, I would take that deal because I did not like what I saw against Philadelphia. Washington head coach Jay Gruden says Jordan's hamstring is minor. Look, this guy is constantly injured, constantly banged up. I bought into T-Hole. T-Hole told me this year, Nick, he's going to eat. He's going to eat defenses. He's going to eat catches. So I have a lot of shares in Jordan Reed. I am handcuffing with Niles Paul if necessary. I am worried. Sure, you're saying it's minor, but I don't believe anything that comes out of coaches' mouths midweek. So let's see. If he's back in the lineup, I think whoever the tight end in Washington is going to have a lot of opportunity based on, we've talked about this a little bit, Garcon, Jackson taking the top off the defense. A lot of mid-range games can be available there, and I like whoever the tight end is in Washington. Doug Martin did not practice Wednesday with his knee. We'll see what happens there. And on Tuesday, John Harbaugh said Bernard Pierce is still a big part of the Baltimore offense. He actually said, quote, "You don't lose faith in a player because of a bad play." Well, you know what? Bernard Pierce hasn't looked good. Forget the fumble. And I was a guy who was thinking Bernard Pierce has a lot of skill. He's an interesting player. I'd love to see what he's going to do. Forsett's not the guy there. Again, I want no part of this offense other than Dennis Pitta because I think it's going to be a rough year for Baltimore. A lot of people have him for 10, 11 wins. I think Baltimore is going to be in a transition year. I'll leave it at that. Gronk with his knee was limited in practice on Wednesday, but he's expected to play. That's something you're going to hear over and over all season with Gronkowski. He's going to play. As long as he's healthy, he will play, but he's going to be limited in practice. Coach Mike Pettin from Cleveland hinted that he sees Isaiah Crowell as more of a power back than Terrence West. And you know what? That's fair. He is. So he might get the goal line opportunities, vulture some touchdowns. If you did pick him up, good for you. It's a great call. But Terrence West, as long as Ben Tate is hurt, West is the guy that I want in that offense because I think he's just going to get way more opportunity. He's definitely the guy that I want. I'm big on Terrence West. Got him in a couple of dynasty leagues this year. Okay, we're going to go to break in just a minute, but real quick first, before we do that, I want to go over a couple of things I am watching in tonight's game, Pittsburgh and Baltimore. Who touches the ball in the backfield for Baltimore? That's the key thing I'm looking at. Can Le'Veon Bell repeat his Week 1 performance? Because I'm close to going all in. That was a dominant performance last week. I really want to see him do well watching him tonight. The other key takeaway that I'll be looking at, how many targets is Marcus Wheaton going to get? He had 7 last week, converted 6 of those for 97 yards. How many targets does Dennis Pitta have? Because I think he's the guy there. And then the 2 wide receivers for Baltimore. Steve Smith had 15 targets last week. Torrey Smith had 7. Is that going to flip-flop? Or is Steve Smith Joe Flacco's new safety blanket? Those are things we are going to look at when we come back. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to look at some of the expert rankings from around the fantasy football universe, see what people are talking about. We'll do that right after this. Fantasy Sports Network, this is Razzball Radio. We'll be right back. Welcome back, Razzball Radio. Fantasy Sports Network, Nick Capozzi here with you, taking you through some of the things you need to know in the fantasy football universe. Okay, this is one thing I'm going to try and do regularly. I want to know what people who are smarter than me are actually thinking about rankings. A great go-to is fantasypros.com, because what they do is they take the expert consensus rankings. They have over 100 experts from all the major networks, websites that participate in this. And basically what it does is it kind of distills it down to what the average is, but it also gives you the top and bottom. Well, it gives you where everyone has them ranked. But it's interesting because you'll see guys who, you know, one ranker will have him 29th overall at the position, and another guy's got him 5th. So what's the logic there? What are they potentially thinking? And is this something that maybe, you know, we can kind of get an idea of maybe something that we missed? All right, let's start at quarterback with Jake Locker. Overall, he is the 13th quarterback this week in the expert consensus rankings at fantasypros.com. Sigmund Bloom from Football Guys, great follow on Twitter, has him 5th, which is really high. Now, it's against Dallas, and I could see him having a big game because that defense is putrid. But it might be one of those things, too, where Tony Romo keeps turning the ball over, and it's the Tennessee defense that actually comes out ahead in that situation. But Jake Locker as high as 5th and as low as 29th. That's Houday from Project Roto. T, what are you thinking, man? 29th? I mean, that's a little excessive for me. I think at a minimum, he'll be about league average, which is where he is right now in the experts consensus ranking at 13. I don't know if he could go as high as 5 this year or this week in terms of quarterback, but I could see that with Dallas's defense. So that's an interesting start for me. I'm not starting him over any of the top 10 quarterbacks, but 2 QB leagues, you got a super flex, definitely someone that I would consider. Big Ben versus the Ravens tonight, Thursday Night Football. He is 18th overall. Emil Cadillac from Football Diehards has him as high as 4th. And Scout Pro, their site projections have him as 28th. What a variance, 4 to 28. I'm thinking, again, we talked about it earlier, I think Baltimore's in for a bit of a regression this year. I like Big Ben. I like him against Baltimore. I think league average 18th is probably right. I could see him having, 250 to 300 yards, a couple of touchdowns, maybe an INT. So right about middle of the pack. I don't know about 4. I mean, that's kind of crazy. Here's an interesting one. Marshawn Lynch going up against an underrated and stout San Diego defense. Again, Emil Cadillac from Football Diehards has him 19th. That's a little bananas to me. That doesn't make sense to me because he looked dominant against Green Bay. And Green Bay's defense is better than San Diego's defense. So I don't know if he's going to go for 100-plus yards and 2 touchdowns, but there's no way I would have him anywhere near the 19th overall running back for this week, even if you're playing full-point PPR. Lynch looked beastly against Green Bay. That was actually an extremely dominant performance. It got lost in the shuffle a little bit because of how dominant Seattle's defense was and how good they looked. But I think Marshawn Lynch is going to have a big game against San Diego. All right, Trent Richardson. This guy's making me crazy. I want to like him. I still think there's upside there. And if I'm wrong, then I will go down with the ship on Trent Richardson. That's fair. I'm waiting at least a couple more weeks before I make any decisions. But Russell Clay from Dynasty League Football. By the way, you love Dynasty rankings. Dynasty League Football is a great resource for you. He has Trent Richardson as the 12th running back versus Philly. That is as high as I've seen Trent Richardson ranked this week. The average is 37th. So I hope so. I need to see, you know what I need to see from Trent Richardson? A little bit of quickness. And I saw quickness and agility from him in his rookie year. I haven't seen that quickness since. It's like he's slowed down. You know what? Great example, actually. If you watch the San Francisco-Dallas game, Frank Gore's slowing down, but then you get Carlos Hyde come in, who looks just like Gore, but a lot quicker. And that's how Gore looked back in the day. And I don't know what happened in terms of Trent Richardson's quicks, but, man, you gotta be quick like a bunny rabbit, my man. I got to see something from you this week, Trent Richardson, or else I'm really going to start to worry. And one of the guys that I was really big on in the preseason might come back to haunt me. Another guy really big on this year, big spread on Percy Harvin. I've said if he stays healthy, he has the upside of a top 5 wide receiver in football. Well, Michael Pecan of Fantasy Alarm has him number 1. #1 matchup this week against San Diego. Dave Richard of CBS Sports, great industry mind, has him at number 26. That to me is really low. I don't know that he's going to be the #1 wide receiver this week, because anytime you take a group of Calvin Johnson, AJ Green, Julio Jones, it is a crapshoot to aim for #1. But 26 by Mr. Richard is low. Average is 13th. I love me some Percy Harvin this year. If someone wants to trade you Percy Harvin, go get him. Someone who's worried about the injuries, all these guys have injury worries. The real concern with him was the migraines, but that seems to be solved. If he is healthy, monster year, Percy Harvin. Okay, what else we got? Larry Fitzgerald versus the G-Men. 19th average. Jody Smith of Gridiron Experts, the highest at #8. They're not gonna force the ball to him. I mean, Bruce Arians made that clear. No matter what, Larry Fitzgerald Sr., his dad, who of course is a columnist, said. High at #8. I think they are going to look for him this week just to kind of balance it out. You kind of have to. And against, again, that Giants defense, which I think the Giants are in trouble. Dalton Del Don of Yahoo at 43. That's real low. I've got him somewhere probably around 15, 16, 17. I could see them, even though they're not going to force the ball to him, I could see them coming back to him and seeing what he can do. All right, Travis Kelce, average is 17th overall. Tom Poisel of Top Tier Football has him at #5 among tight ends. The reason I don't think that's crazy is Dwayne Bowe's coming back. Last week, Donnie Avery was the guy getting the targets and receptions in Kansas City. Andy Reid knows if that offense is going to move at all, they need another pass catcher. And the most likely guy in that scenario, other than Dwayne Bowe, is Kelce. I could see a top 5 tight end week out of Travis Kelce this week, so we'll see how that goes. And finally, Dan Yanachko of EDS Football, Dennis Pitta, 6th tight end overall. He's got him at 19th. Now remember I mentioned earlier, that's one of the guys I want to see today at 15 targets, 10 receptions last week. Dennis Pitta could have a monster year, but 19th, that one's a bit surprising. Real quick here, defenses, some huge variances. There's 9 defenses that at least one expert has ranked #1 overall this week. But then you get Houston, the consensus #2 pick, as high as #1, as low as 22. They're going up against Oakland. Did you see their performance against Washington last week? Love Houston this week. Love Arizona versus the Giants. Love the Bucs versus St. Louis. Love Denver versus KC. Where you start to get me worried here, #6, St. Louis versus Tampa Bay. Don't like that matchup for the Rams this week. New England at Minnesota. That one, I think Minnesota's offense is better than expected, and New England's D didn't look great last week. So that's what I got for you, ladies and gentlemen, or gentlemen and 4 ladies, as we like to say here at Razzball. This is Razzball Radio, Fantasy Sports Network. We'll be back tomorrow. Sky and I are going to talk start sits and other stuff happening around the league. Thanks for joining us today, guys. See you tomorrow.